Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my bookish channel where I review fantasy, the occasional Stephen King book, and whatever else I am feeling like. Today, I recently finished War Storm the other month. This is the fourth and final book in the Red Queen series, so I thought I would do something a little bit different, and instead of just reviewing that book, I'm going to review this whole series. Yes, there are 4 books here, but I am missing one of them. I did read it on my Kindle, so I have an e-copy of that one. As you can tell, I have gotten these books via bargain book hunting, so they're in all different conditions, let's just say. First up, I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of kind of what this series is about, starting with our first book, Red Queen. So Red Queen, the setup of this world is that there are basically 2 types of people in this society. There are the silver-blooded people and there are the red-blooded people. The silver-blooded people in this world are the people that are in power. They are the kings and queens, they are the ruling class, and they also have powers. Think of them as like the X-Men. There's various different powers that each silver-blooded person has. They only usually have one type, like some are can use fire, some can manipulate water. They have singers, which can get into your mind. So the silvers, because they all have this power, are actually in power. On the other side of that, we have the red-blooded people, and the red-blooded people do not have any powers whatsoever. Therefore, they are the working class. They are the ones that are put to work in this society. Obviously, they are very poor, and they are also conscripted into this ongoing war, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So enter into our story, Mare Barrow. Mare is our main character. We follow her from book 1 through the end. Mare is a red-blooded girl. She comes from a very poor family. She has a lot of brothers and sisters. One of her older brothers has already been lost to the war. She's about to turn of age when she will be conscripted into the army. It doesn't matter if you are male or female, everyone, when they reach a certain age, gets conscripted into the army. The country that they live in, which is called Norda, has been at war with this other country, the Lakelands, for like forever. They don't really specify how long, just that it's been a really long time, and they have the red-blooded, they're their soldiers because they are disposable. So Mare doesn't want to get conscripted. She wants a better life for herself. She wants a better life for her younger sister. One day, while Mare is out around in town, she comes across this person that she finds out that there is like this underground rebellion going on. There is this group called the Scarlet Guard, and they are a group of red-blooded people that are trying to rebel against the Silvers. It's very much like X-Men meets the Hunger Games. This book came out in 2015, I believe, originally, so it's been a while, but it came out after the Hunger Games, but before some of the other stories, so you'll recognize a lot of YA tropes in here. This book wasn't the first to do some of them, but was the first to do some of them at the same time, if that makes sense. So anyway, Mare kind of hooks up with this Scarlet Guard, and they send her on a mission like, hey, you're gonna go into the capital and you're gonna spy for us. And she agrees to do this because she thinks that it'll help their cause. So she goes to the palace, but while she's at the palace, there's this big event going on. And the event that's going on is called the Queen's Trial. And what the Queen's Trial is that basically all of the young silver ladies of the kingdom, all of the young silver ladies of the court are basically battling, and whoever wins this like prestigious battle, because remember they all have powers, whoever wins this battle is going to be betrothed to the prince. So in this case, we have 2 princes. One is Cal, he's the older brother, and then there's a younger brother called Prince Maven. Now, Cal is important because Cal is the heir to the throne. Now, his mother, as of the start of the story, is no longer alive. His mother is dead. There's a lot of rumors about how she actually died and a lot of mystery, but Cal's father, the current king, remarried another woman, Alara her name is, and Alara had a son, and that is Maven. So Maven and Cal are actually only half brothers. So the winner of this queen's trial is going to be betrothed to the heir and eventually one day become queen. That's why it's called the Queen's Trial. So this trial starts, there's this battle going on, they're all battling, all these crazy things are happening, and somehow, some way, Mare gets kind of thrown into the middle of this stadium, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, she has these electric powers that manifest, electricity. Now, she doesn't know where these powers came from or why she has them, and neither does anyone else. And the royal family, they obviously don't really know what to do with her. They can't let her go because she's red-blooded and she has powers, and no one can know that that is even a possibility because it would disrupt the whole power balance. So you kind of have this trope that you see in a lot of YA fantasy where you have someone who is, oh, I'm just an average girl, I'm not anything special, but actually I am the most special of all. And the thing that really drew me to this story in the beginning was the characters. I think Mare is a great character, and I like her relationship with the two different princes. The two princes have very different relationships with Mare. So on one hand, we have Cal, the heir, and he's already betrothed to someone else, the person that actually kind of quote-unquote won the Queen's Trial. But he kind of finds himself drawn to Mare, and then the younger prince, they decide, the royal family decides, hey, because we don't know what to do with you, we're gonna betroth you to our younger prince, Prince Maven, and they kind of form a bit of a bond. There's a twist coming later. So it kind of annoys me a little bit that Mare has not one, two princes and a childhood friend that all kind of are romantically interested in her, which is kind of annoying because it takes that I'm an average girl trope to like the next level. Not one, not two, but three different love interests. So I guess you could say that's minor spoilers for book one. I won't say what happens, but let's just say that by the end of book one, Mare does escape her situation at the castle. It's very crazy what happens, but she escapes and something happens that does disrupt the power balance, and the old king ends up passing away. But instead of Cal taking over as the king, it's actually Maven that does. So that brings us to book two. Book two, Glass Sword, starts off with Mare on the run from Maven and his mother because they aren't in power now. So at this point in the series, Maven has kind of become the villain. But he's become a very sympathetic villain because of his mother and his mother's like power. They call her a singer. She's got the power to get into your mind. You really don't know at this point like how much of Maven's actions are really his own and how much of them are being influenced by his mother. So even though he's like obviously crazy and he's not doing the right thing, you can't help but feel a little bit sympathetic towards him, which I do really like. So in Glass Sword, Mare is on the run from Maven, and of course she starts to figure out that yes, she's red, yes, she has these powers, but she may not be the only one. So even though we thought that she was the most special of all, there actually might be people out there who are more special, or at least who are as special. So Mare goes and tries to find refuge with the Scarlet Guard, finds their headquarters and says, hey, can you help me find the rest of these people like me, people who are red-blooded, people who have powers, because they can help us. So what follows is kind of like a little bit of a cat and mouse type game is kind of the plot of this book, where we have Mare and the Scarlet Guard going after different people, and then, you know, Maven kind of going after her and also trying to catch these people. And this all comes to a head in this big prison that they have, where I guess they're holding a bunch of these people. That's basically the plot of Glass Sword. I feel like not a lot happens in terms of like the overall arc of the story in that book. Like, it's okay. I definitely did not like it as much as book one, and I don't feel like there's a lot of development of the characters other than it really, what the point I think of the second book is that it really expands the world. It expands the world past, you know, just Mare's village in the capital. So that's a good thing, but it is a bit hard to get through. So that brings us to book 3, which is going to be King's Cage. So at the end of Glass Sword, Mare finds herself back with Maven, back in his clutches. He basically captures her at the end of Glass Sword, and now she's kind of stuck with him. This book is rough. This book is rough. It's a decent sized book, and for most of the book, Mare is in a cage. Most of the book, Mare is in a cage. So to help break that up, this book starts to give us POV chapters of different characters. One of the characters is Cameron. She is another a red-blooded person with powers that we met in the previous book. And then another person is Evangeline. And Evangeline is a silver. Evangeline is actually the one that won or would have won the Queen's trial in the beginning of the book. So she has spent her whole life thinking that she's gonna marry Cal and she's gonna be the next queen, and she's a total bitch, but I actually think she's one of the most fascinating characters in this whole series. So unfortunately, we don't get very many Evangeline chapters. We get way more Cameron chapters. And I have to say, I don't like Cameron at all. I do not like her character at all. She's okay. She has this weird power. Her power is that she has the power to take away other people's powers. So for example, you have Mare, she has electricity. If Cameron touches her, Mare loses her powers. So yes, that's great in combat, but she's just not, I don't find her that interesting. I hate to say it, but she is, again, she is a red. She comes from a very poor family. She has a lot of anger issues. She's just this angry young girl. She's also scared of her powers, doesn't know how to use them. There could have been something interesting there. There could have been an interesting arc for her character, but the book never went there. So I have to say that Red Queen was my favorite so far. Glass Sword, a little less favorite, and then King's Cage, I really didn't like that much. The only parts I did like were the parts about Evangeline, and unfortunately, they were only very, very, very few chapters in here. But the chapters that we did get really start to show Evangeline in a new light. Up until this point in the series, she's only been this, like, hardcore, bitchy, snotty, privileged, silver character. But we find out in this book that she actually has a romantic relationship with this other girl. This girl who's actually engaged to her brother. So her whole plan has been to basically marry Cal, but keep this other lady as a mistress. Because in this world, it's not proper for, you know, women to be with other women, and she doesn't think she has any other option. So the person that she loves, she thinks can only be like her mistress, basically, which is kind of sad. And it kind of explains a lot of Evangeline's motivations. So like I said, the plot of this book is pretty boring. Not a lot happens. Mare spends most of her time trapped with Maven. While that's going on, Cameron, she is with the Scarlet Guard. They're trying to figure out how to free Mare from Maven. And lo and behold, by the end of the book, they do, which finally brings me to book 4, Warstorm. So going into Warstorm, Mare has just gotten free from her captivity with Maven, and now Mare is back with the Scarlet Guard, back with her family, and they're going to a different country, a place called Montfort, so that they can finally raise the army that they need to defeat Maven once and for all. Once and for all. This book, it took a little while to get here, but this book definitely was good. Way better than books 2 and 3. Way better than books 2 and 3. It's hard to tell if I like this book better or the first one better because it's been so long since I read the first one, but I will say that at least the series ends on a high note. So, We find Mare in this other country trying to plead her case with her and the Scarlet Guard so that they can get their army. Now, at the same time, you know, Maven, on his side, he's also trying to gather people to his cause. So in this book, we have another new POV, which I wasn't sure about going in. I'm like, why do we need a brand new character and a brand new point of view, the fourth book in the series? But I actually ended up not minding it. So the new character and the new POV that we get here is this young girl named Iris. Now, Iris comes from the Lakelands. And if you remember when I was talking about book 1, I said Norda, so Maven's country, and the Lakelands have been at war for a long time. But they decide to put their differences aside so that they can kind of team up and take out, you know, Mare, her Scarlet Guard, and the rebels. So in order to do that, Iris is the princess of the Lakelands, and she becomes betrothed to Maven. So in this book, we have 3 different POVs. We have Mare, we have Evangeline again, thankfully, more Evangeline, and then we have Iris, the new character. And I think the point of having Iris in here is that she really gives you, because most of her interactions are with Maven, really gives a good indication of like what's actually going on in Maven's mind and like how crazy he really is, for lack of a better term. Like, he's so damaged and he's so broken that like there's really no hope for him. You know, even throughout this book, Cal, older brother, he still holds on to this hope that maybe he can fix Maven somehow. Maybe he can find someone who had Maven's mother's powers, you know, maybe he can fix him. But as the story goes on, it just doesn't seem like that's going to be a possibility. So the plot in this book is way more exciting than the other 2, mostly because we have a lot of like battles. We have Mare and the Scarlet Guard battling, you know, Maven and the Lakelands, and then once that happens, there's more battles and there's sneaking around. There's so many different factions and so many different groups, and everyone's backstabbing and betraying and making alliances. It makes Warstorm way more exciting than the other 2 books. Again, I still don't know. It's hard to say if I like this one better. I feel like I do, but I also feel like that could be recency bias. Because I read this one most recently, I feel like I may have liked it better than A Red Queen originally, but who's to say? So all of this to say, that covers the plot of the series. Yeah, that was a lot. So now let's circle back to the characters just for a little bit. I know I've already talked about them throughout, but just so that I make sure I get all my points across here. Starting with Mare, she is our main character. I really liked her in book 1 because I feel like she kind of reminds me a bit of like a Katniss Everdeen type character, where she's kind of unsure of herself, you know, especially when she first gets her powers, because she doesn't really understand what's happening or what's going on. But as she learns, you know, she starts to get, I think, really smart, where I feel like some characters, even Katniss, made mistakes. I don't think Mare makes a lot of mistakes. The only mistakes that she makes is that she always like kind of sees the best in people, or tries to see the best in people, and sometimes that, you know, kind of smacks her in the face. So I'd say in the first book, she is a bit of a blank slate, kind of like Alina in Shadow and Bone. But as the series goes on, she definitely gets more agency, definitely gets more, makes her own decisions, makes her own choices, and doesn't let people tell her what to do or how to feel. Especially when it comes to her relationship with Cal, because Cal is... Because he is another guy that's supposed to be the king of the Silvers, but Mare obviously does not want to go, does not want things to go back to the way they were before. So even though they're trying to take down Maven, she doesn't want things to just because they win doesn't mean that, oh, well, the Silvers are going to rule and the Reds are going to drool again. She doesn't want that. But Cal has been raised as a child, you know, his whole life, all he's ever wanted is to be the king and be a Silver King. And as much as he claims that he's not going to be the same type of king as his father, like, the reality is you just can't make those changes right away. And I think that's one good thing that the book does, is that it really hammers home the point that the people that are in charge or in power, the king, are only there because of the people around them. In other words, the only way that Cal can really retake his throne and really become the rightful king is if all the other silver lords and ladies like vote for him to be in power. And they're not going to do that if Cal is automatically going to be like, oh, well, all of a sudden Reds have rights and Reds aren't going to be conscripted and Reds can get paid a livable wage. Like, if he goes and tries to do all these things, he's not going to be in power very long. So he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to change things, and he wants to make them better. But at the same time, he's not going to be able to do that as quickly or as fast or as effectively as Mare and the rest of the rebels want him to. But Mare can't help but still have feelings for him. He can't still help but have feelings for her. So it makes this really interesting dichotomy. You have two people who are very stubborn, are very set in their beliefs and in their ways, and don't want to compromise those. So that part is really interesting. So I've talked about Mare, I've talked about Cal, I've talked about Maven, I've talked about Evangeline, some of the other characters. Those are really the big players in this story. There are obviously other characters. Mare has a whole family of brothers and sisters, but honestly, none of them have like huge roles, like little things here and there, but nothing big. Again, there's a lot of other characters that have powers. Other than Cameron, a lot of them are pretty minor. The only other person I will mention is Farley, Captain Farley. She is the quote-unquote captain of the Scarlet Guard. She's not the leader of the Scarlet Guard. Her father is actually the leader, but for most of the story, she is the person that Mare really works with. She is the person that represents the rebels, that represent the, hey, we want rights for our fellow red-blooded people. And Farley is an interesting character. It's weird because throughout the course of the story, she's not in book 1, I think, at all. Only maybe like one scene. She's a way bigger character in book 2. She's a way bigger character in book 3. But then in book 4, she kind of takes a step into the background. So I like Farley as kind of like that, like tough and gruff. She is a soldier, true and true. She is a soldier, and she is here. She means business. She doesn't take any crap, and she knows how Mare feels about Cal, and she thinks that that is a liability and that is a weakness. She and Mare often clash heads, but at the end of the day, they do still have the same goal. So she ends up being more of an ally. At the end of the day, they have the same goals, so they do end up being allies. But I will say, I wish that there was something a bit more dramatic that happened to her. Like, there is one thing that happens that's whatever, but I don't know. I personally felt like she could have had a bit of a more exciting or dramatic story arc, but that didn't happen for her. But that's okay, because we have a lot of other characters that did have that. So how do I really feel about this series? I've read a lot of YA fantasy, and I kind of feel like this is a mix of fantasy and dystopia at the same time, because it takes place where you have, you know, the two groups of people in power and people not in power. You have the whole conscription theme going on, and this is a theme that we see in a lot of YA stories. Shadow and Bone, The Hunger Games, and Ember in the Ashes. Like, there's so many stories that have this same kind of setup. This was one of the earlier ones to do it, I will say, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily did it the best. I had really high hopes when I started Red Queen. I really like Red Queen. I really like the first one. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. I like the whole idea of like everyone having different powers. I think that's really fun. Unfortunately, books 2 and 3 were really not great. They're really not great. I did not care for them that much. But then book 4, because I don't DNF, I stuck out the series. Book 4, I ended up liking a lot. I really liked book 4. So what does that mean overall? I think this is an average series, I have to say. It's an average series. I do think that Red Queen, the first book, is worth a read. If you like YA, if you like fantasy or dystopian stories, I do think the first one is worth a read. And if you really, really, really like it, keep going with the series. If you think Red Queen is just okay, then I would just stop there and not continue, because you have to be dedicated to get through to the good stuff at the end. That's my overall thoughts on Red Queen. I am glad I read it. I am glad I got to the end, but man, I wish I could have skipped books 2 and 3. Now that I've been talking forever, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out, and I will be back with more book reviews coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.